and do not add a single unit of housing. We're here today to say we can do better than that. We challenge our elected leaders in our community to focus on housing an additional 3,000 people instead through turnkey ready solutions. Today, you will hear from people experiencing homelessness, advocates, service providers, nonprofit leaders, landlords, and neighbors who have signed on to the 3,000 Challenge, a commitment to house 3,000 additional people in 2022. This challenge was developed by a collective of nearly 20 organizations working together to offer true solutions to homelessness. And we invite you to join this movement online at 3000challengepdx.org. These solutions are possible if we all work together. To get things started, I will introduce Street Roots vendor Bronwyn Carver, who will discuss sweeps and campers who need better options.
Hi, I'm Bronwyn, and okay, so my name is Bronwyn, and I'm going to talk to you today about sweeps. I just want to point out that sweeps don't move people anywhere but to the surrounding neighborhoods that they're swept from. So you're really just increasing the homeless population within the neighborhoods that people are already trying to have people not be camping in. Without adequate alternatives, where are the campers supposed to go? There's still no probable places that a camper can be moved to other than the street still at this time. And not everyone wants to shelter with 200 people that they're not familiar with. That being said, most people have pets, and they do have significant others that aren't allowed to shelter with them in a traditional shelter situation. To mention that Rapid Response, who does the sweep, does not treat people out here with respect and dignity as the mayor would like to think that they do, and the rhetoric that he says in regards to that company. Plus, they say that we can get our belongings back. Yet, and when they swept my Overlook Kaiser camp, we noticed that they placed people's belongings from tents in plastic bags. And those plastic bags were then placed on the truck where the trash was kept. Not one bag was labeled that where tent it came from, what camp it came from. So I defy you to tell me, how does one get their belonging back in a warehouse if there's no identification upon where it came from? I'd like to get my possessions back, please. It'll be that bag on the corner, I'm pretty sure. That being said, the money that we spent poses a financial burden to the city as well. The money that we spend on the cruise and company can be better served with a camp management model, giving porta-johns and regular trash pickup to established camps at this time. Perhaps good neighbor contracts can be used to help support both homeowner and campers. As long as a camp is small and clean and not near a school or entrances to buildings, why not manage them until the housing becomes an option? And at the time of when they post us on the signs, why is the language so vague? Why do they not tell us definitive language like how many yards, or how many feet it is that is covered from the posting of the notice to where it then ends as far as the camp being swept or the amount of tents? How come they don't tell us how many tents to an area is or is not allowed? I ask, why is there also not anybody coming with outreach at that time to offer alternatives to the campers? I'd say that the city can do so much better. So I urge you to think that over. Thank you.
Next, we'll have George McCarthy, who is also a Street Roots vendor, who will talk about some concerns with mass sheltering.
My name is George McCarthy. My name is George McCarthy. I'm just going to speak briefly about mass sheltering and my experiences. I've been in, as it is now, about 7 shelters. I went from New York to South Carolina to Oregon. And the biggest problem you have with it is that it's impossible to have a real personality in one. You have no privacy whatsoever. You're also a warehouse with a lot of very troubled people. And I've had everything happen from assaults. I was nearly killed in one shelter in Wards Island, New York. I had to leave there. I was nearly raped. I mean, it's a very dangerous, volatile environment. I've had fights in my sleep by being attacked. Not to mention that you have staff members that are wonderful and staff members that are not, that will do anything from people have been robbed, their medication has been taken, or they've been deliberately escalated so that they can be put out. One of the shelters I stayed in here, one man was notorious for throwing people out in the 60s and 70s. I mean, it's surrounded by camps, angry people. People get assaulted, they get hurt for specious reasons. it's a dangerous, horrible way to be. And the worst part is just trying to get yourself out of homelessness requires a lot of dedication and concentration, and exactly the kind of mental state you can't have because you're living in a panic. It's like trying to do proper organizational things when you got the mind of a person late for work looking for their car keys. It's frightening, it's demoralizing, and it will infantilize you. You have curfews, you have people that will speak to you like you're a child, and it just doesn't seem to end. This is all over and above the problem. Trying to find yourself decent housing in these environments can take you forever just because of it. For my part, just thinking about being warehoused under guard or to being watched in such a way is going to be so much worse for people. And it sets a horrible precedent when you can essentially raise rents to the point where people can't pay them, have them dumped out on the street and very easily moved into another area. It creates a horrible way of looking at things for people are living. And if you really want for people to be able to be independent, you've got to have ability to have enough privacy and safety to develop the frame of mind to do so. They've never worked for me. I've been trying forever to get out of them, to be honest with you. And I'm recently got into a motel, and it's only recently I've been feeling better. The last place I stayed, I was suffering such severe suicidal depression. I did everything I could to get out of it. So I can only tell you, it doesn't work. B, it demonstrably makes you sick. It makes you worse. I mean, and you will have recovery time from it because you lose your sense of self. But I think even more what frightens me is the whole militaristic aspect of it, as treating people like refugees, basically, for being poor. And it's not something you can get out of your mind and not recognize. And it's terrifying. You feel like your country has really given up on you. And we can absolutely do better than this. I know we can. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I almost for a moment just ran out of words, but I feel like I said what I needed to. And thank you very much, everyone.
No problems. No problem at all, George. Next, we will have Brandy Tuck, who's the Executive Director of Homeless Family Solutions. And then after that, for the folks that do have the run of show, you can just come right in after the person ahead of you is done speaking, introduce yourself, and we'll keep it moving.
There's a chance that Brandy's not here, so then we'll move on to Candace Avalos.
Great. Good morning, all. My name is Candace Avalos. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm wearing multiple hats as I speak to you all today as Executive Director of Verde, board member of Street Roots and Portland Neighbors Welcome, and as a community advocate who is tired of the never-ending cycles of harm our city continues to put our houseless community through. We're gathered here today to challenge our elected officials, businesses, nonprofits, and our community at large to house 3,000 additional people by the end of this year with housing solutions that are within our reach. Every Portlander has the capacity to pitch into this effort by showing our elected officials that we stand for true solutions that help instead of harm. By partnering with the public and private sector, we believe Portland can provide permanent housing that promotes racial equity by eliminating racial disparities in houselessness and is grounded in our shared values of stability, safety, and health for the unhoused community. Our targeted list of immediate solutions include accessing empty apartments using rent support, landlord coordination, and wraparound services, purchasing properties that are ready to provide housing now, and ensuring that our new and existing affordable housing is accessible to people experiencing houselessness. Right now, we're asking our community to rally their neighbors in support of these efforts. Raising our voices in unison will inspire the political will to move our decision makers more quickly and ethically towards those solutions. We cannot continue to accept bans, sweeps, or enforced relocation, which only increase racial disparities, intensify trauma, cost millions, and do not add a single unit of housing. Whether you're a landlord, a business owner, neighbor, or an elected leader, we urge you to join us in signing the pledge to house 3,000 additional people in 2022. Go to 3000challengepdx.org to sign on today. Let's stand together and tap into Portland's civic and entrepreneurial spirit to get creative in providing solutions that our unhoused community deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Candace. Good morning, everybody. My name is Julie Delgado. I'm the Vice President of the Urban League of Portland.
Urban League is one of the oldest civil rights and service organizations dedicated to the Black communities of Oregon and Southwest Washington. So I'm really here today to talk about how homelessness is an issue that is profoundly impacted by racial justice. As many of you know, Black Portlanders are more than twice as likely than their white peers to experience homelessness. Once homeless, Black individuals experiencing homelessness are nearly 4 times more likely to be arrested by a Portland police officer than a white person experiencing homelessness. Portland is also a city where Black-led households' median income keep us priced out of every single neighborhood. And this injustice has continued unabated for decades. We've really been screaming about this injustice for years, and we're really excited by the sense of urgency. We're a little bit puzzled that some of the proposed solutions seem to lack any recognition of the racist harms of our past. So we're here to offer 3 strategies today that are bold and that seek to end homelessness by avoiding replicating those mistakes. The first of our key strategies is a community pledge by property owners to use existing housing to be part of the solution. We know that Portland believes that Black lives matter. We know that people experiencing homelessness are our neighbors. And we know that there are enough empty homes that outnumber the people who are sleeping on the streets right now. So we're asking our neighbors to take an anti-racist action. So many of us reckoned with who we are and who we are as a city just in 2020. And we want to capture that energy to do what is right, to fix these harms. So we're asking you to pledge to be part of a solution to end homelessness now. Urban League is one of dozens of organizations in the city that offers what's known as scattered site permanent supportive housing. This is where Urban League leases market rate units of housing around the city. We pay market rent for them, and then we place a tenant who is recovering from chronic homelessness as we provide wraparound services. This is permanently affordable, supportive housing. This program is immensely successful. Over 98% of our tenants remain in their homes for years. This is a model that could be taken to scale immediately without waiting for units to be built and without the trauma and harm of sweeps and mass shelters. All property owners need to do to commit to being part of the solution is sign this pledge. This pledge is available right now online at 3000 Challenge PDX, where you can sign to commit to being part of the solution to end homelessness. We know that there are members of our community that will want to be part of the solution, and this will build an interest list that will show our elected leaders that the community is open to solutions that end homelessness, not hide it. Once this list exists, this will actually give our elected leaders the political courage that they need to do what is right, to do what is safe, and to do what is best for the city that we know we can be. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Julia. I think I'm next. Hi, everyone. I'm Angela Uwerebelau. I'm the founder of Oregon Kids Read, and I'm going to speak today both wearing that hat and also as a Portland resident. So first off, some people may be wondering, well, what's a literacy grassroots network doing endorsing the 3000 Challenge? And we're doing it because we are an organization that is committed to racial, social, and economic justice. And I would urge and encourage any organization out there that has that in your remit to endorse this challenge. It's an incredible opportunity for all of us to step out of our silos and work together to achieve the city that we want to see. And stepping back now to follow up on what Julia just described, I'd like to share a personal story about encouraging any landlord to consider signing this pledge. So I'm not a Portland, I don't own a Portland rental. But after my mom died in 2019, my sister Becca and I inherited her small townhouse in Southern Oregon. And the second time that we went down to Southern Oregon to continue going through her things was right after the 2020 wildfires. So we landed at the Medford airport and we're driving to our hometown and just seeing block after block of businesses, of homes that we had seen over the years growing up completely obliterated. And when we were at Mom's house, and like I said, going through her things, and those of you who have gone through that process know what that's like, we looked at each other and realized we have this vacant, furnished place, and there are all of these neighbors who now do not have homes. What can we do how can we help meet the devastation, the need in our region? And we needed help to be able to do that, and we received it. So first we reached out to our neighbors to talk to them about what we were thinking of doing, opening up Mom's House to a family, and they were supportive of that idea. And then we connected to a mutual aid organization that was working with displaced families, and they helped find a family who would be willing to move into our home, and that mutual aid organization continued to offer supportive services to that family. We also had a longtime friend who was a fluent Spanish speaker who volunteered to be the property manager. So the family, if they had questions or they needed something fixed, they could go directly to him. My sister and I were in a fortunate position where we could offer for almost a year free housing. But if we hadn't been in that position, this mutual aid organization and other groups did have money to help if we needed to have rent paid. So we welcomed a family into Mom's House. They stayed for a number of months, and they were able to secure permanent housing. And after they moved out, another family moved in and did the same. So I share this story because Becca and I, my sister and I, have never regretted that decision. It's one of the best we ever made. And our gratitude, our deep gratitude, is primarily to those two families who accepted our offer to host them, because they enabled us to participate in the healing of our region where we'd grown up and we loved. And they also gave us a chance to see Mom's house filled with life. It had felt so forlorn without her in it. And they gave us a chance as sisters, as a family, to experience healing of our own. So anyone out there in Portland who has a rental unit, I would say, please consider signing the pledge and joining the 3,000 challenge and being a part of the healing of our city that we love. You will never regret it. And there are lots of ways where people can support you doing that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Angela. Certainly appreciate your support. Good morning, everyone. My name is Katrina Holland, and I am the Executive Director of JOIN, which is a local homeless services agency here in the city of Portland, serving Multnomah and Washington County, as well as little slivers of a little bit of Clackamas County. You know, one of the things that we've been consistently saying time and time again is that many solutions and options have been proposed to address the homelessness crisis for those of us that have been in this work. But many of them are either ignored, shelved, or when funded, done so in a really anemic fashion. So for many years, to avoid these crises, many of us, as you have heard, have stood together pleading, screaming with the city and county for more targeted investments to scale up what we have found to be immensely successful on a small scale. And one such idea that has been proposed that I'm here to talk about today is the idea of master leasing, which falls in line with this immediate opportunity to utilize some of our vacant housing. So in the simplest of terms, master leasing is a concept where an entity such as a government agency or a nonprofit becomes the tenant in a unit or building and sublets to someone else. In an agency like JOIN's, this is also coupled with supportive wraparound services that help maximize participants' long-term success in housing. And these supports can include the full range of services from in-home behavioral health care to peer support to addiction and supportive services, all the way to financial planning and program exits once a household has reached stability. In exchange for guaranteed income, whether occupied or not, and enhanced support in tenant success, property owners and the renting entity negotiate longer-term leases, in-unit maintenance and repairs, alternative screening criteria, and much more. The cost to run this program is cheaper than the national average cost per taxpayer leaving someone unsheltered, and significantly cheaper than our local costs. And it's thousands upon thousands of dollars cheaper, about 20%, than sheltering someone alone, and even more less expensive than sheltering someone and placing them in housing as part of an exit to their shelter stay. I can tell you, as an agency that's been running this program for about 5 to 7 years, this program has always been full. When a vacancy presents itself, it's gone in a matter of days. This program has been very successful keeping families together, serving culturally diverse populations, and getting some of our most difficult housing placement cases places to live that would have otherwise been denied in a private market unit had they applied on their own. We've seen families stable and off the streets for, yes, years in the program. One of the families we just relocated into their own rental unit after participating for 2 years in one has been described by our staff as thriving. And had you met this family 2 years ago, those words have not have rung true. The beauty of this program is that it helps to match individual need of addressing folks' human suffering of being on the street with a tailored, humane approach that doesn't aim to only get that person off the street, but end their stints on the streets altogether. It combines the necessary immediacy we should have to get folks out of living on the streets with doing the hard work of tackling head on the root causes of someone's homelessness. We can avoid just giving someone a shelter bed and calling it good, as we have heard from Brownwin and George's stories that's not helpful, but also in the spirit of true housing first approaches, provide support alongside them to maximize their chances of success to get stable. It also upholds our core values as a city, treating our houseless neighbors like who they are, people who have individual stories, who may want privacy instead of living with 499 or 999 strangers. They have a sink of their own, a refrigerator of their own, a toilet. It honors our collective commitments to be humane and give people choice, the ability to keep their things, and a near-term option at a chance to succeed. Now, is it easy? Absolutely not. But is it worth it? Absolutely. So between two organizations that are before you today, there are only 65 units of this kind of arrangement available. But not for lack of interest on the part of property owners or social workers' desire to participate, but simply because of a lack of funding. Just a week and a half ago, Join was approached by 2 property owners with larger portfolios in multiple neighborhood quadrants who asked how they can be a part of the solution. And while we were ecstatic because of their interest, we weren't able to give them a firm answer as to whether or not they could join the program. We've had about 7 of these interests in the last 6 months. It's the same reason each time: lack of funding to support the necessities of the program, which is more staffing, continued flexible subsidies, more retention support. Our portfolio is currently maxed with our current capacity. But in the spirit of the 3,000 challenge, what if we did scale up this program? What if 3 or 4 organizations leased 100 to 250 each? I went on apartments.com last night at about 10:45 p.m. Guess how many apartments is listed as available? 6,966 units. And while I'm sure some of those are standing advertisements that seek to build a pipeline of interested tenants, even if half those availabilities were just advertisements, that's still 3,483 truly vacant units that are awaiting a tenant today. While this program certainly wouldn't solve homeless for each and every person on the street, because we often say no one size fits all, this program, combined with others that you'll hear about today, could actually end unsheltered street homelessness for thousands of our neighbors. It's big and it's bold. So I'm going to move aside and introduce one of our participating property owners, Kevin Kavanaugh, who's been with the program for a while and with whom we have a lease through 2021 and probably longer, with 2 new developments coming. Kevin?
How's it going? Thanks, Katrina. I hope our lease goes past 2021 because.
Sorry, 2031. My bad.
No worries. I'm Kevin Kavanaugh. I own Gorilla Development here in Portland. I'm a for-profit, small-scale designer and developer. I'm Katrina's landlord. I'm Join's partner at Jolene's first cousin. That's the name of the building. It's at Southeast 28th and Gladstone, and there are 11 of Join's folk who Join collaborated with and sublet to, that are now off the streets and living in permanent solution. It's a nice little, as Julia mentioned, it's a scattered site, urban infill location. And one anecdote, and then but prior to that, a comment. I think the answer is yes. I'm not ecstatic with the mayor's solution, but I know the only truly wrong answer is to do nothing. And we are a city of doers. And I'm excited at what can come out of both the city's office, public sector and private sector. We all need to be part of something, and instead of debating it, we have to just get shovels in the ground. A. B, when I submitted to the Crescent Kenilworth Neighborhood Association, Jolene's first cousin is a project that I was about to break ground on. I thought it would be the first time that rotten tomatoes would be thrown at me by the neighbors. As I basically say, cool, I'm bringing homeless into your neighborhood. At the end of my presentation, when I showed the building, which has a coffee shop and a hair salon and a bakery and some other market rate apartments, and then the sixth unit is an 11-bed apartment, basically. It's a single residence occupancy. And at the end, no one had any comments, positive or negative. They said, thank you, who's next? And I said, wait, don't you have, I was surprised. Don't you have, aren't you concerned? And the guy in the back said, two comments really struck me. The guy in the back said, well, no, if you were coming at us with 115 units, we'd be pushing back aggressively. But these are 11 units. These are going to be our neighbors. We'll likely know their names. And then my comment was, yeah, but you're right. But I'm still impressed that you're being so open to me bringing homeless into your neighborhood. And the woman in front had the most powerful comment, which was, well, once they live here, they won't be homeless anymore. So as we speak, I'm breaking ground on Jolene's second cousin. It's on 70th and Northeast Gladstone. And Jolene's third cousin will be on 46th and Division. Great neighborhoods to grow a community and to maintain a community, and to weave currently homeless folk into society in a way where they're not ostracized or we're not concentrating poverty. An important side note before I go is that there is no public subsidy in any of these projects. As we speak, I don't have anyone for Jolene's second or third cousin. Hopefully Katrina wants to hop aboard, but there's also homeless veterans who only want to live with homeless veterans. There's homeless seniors who only want to live with homeless seniors. It's the homeless population, as we all know, is a broad and varied spectrum, and we have to treat them not with a one-size-fits-all model, but with as many. The answer is yes. If anyone has an idea for a homeless solution, I'm going to tell you yes. Stop talking and just go do it. If I can do this with Katrina's help, without $1 public subsidy, imagine what all the horsepower of the city can do behind concepts like this. So thanks very much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Golino de Lovato, Executive Director of Northwest Pilot Project. We work with low-income seniors to help stabilize their housing and move them from homelessness into housing. We have long relationships with housing providers, landlords, property owners, property managers, and they're so important to us and to other organizations like ours that don't own or manage housing. In the same way that we work with our clients, our relationships with our housing providers start with a conversation. Often we hear from landlords or property owners, what can I do to help address homelessness, to help low-income seniors? And our response, you can be part of the solution, one front door and one set of keys at a time. And that's what the 3000 Challenge is all about. For 53 years, Pilot Project has partnered with landlords to provide the critical resource of housing for the seniors that we serve. These relationships are critical in ensuring our participants can exit homelessness and enter housing with supportive services that follow them as they make the transition. What we find to be really effective is offering a range of options for partnerships with landlords, big and small. No matter how we structure the partnership, though, our approach as a service provider includes being responsive, being proactive, and keeping the line of communication open. When we partner with a landlord or property manager or any organization like Urban League, Join, or Portland Homeless Family Solutions, the landlord gets a team of support within a community-based organization, rent subsidies and payments to make it affordable for the client, and a new tenant who's set up for success in their new home. As Kevin said, once they get housed, they're no longer homeless. Case managers can visit clients in their home, provide support with moving logistics, and help when there's a question or concern. And a case in point is Pilot Project's long relationship with Guardian Real Estate Services. Tom Brennicky, owner of Guardian, said, "We have a 20+ year relationship with Northwest Pilot Project and consider this organization one of Portland's best senior service providers. We're proud of this partnership and our city is fortunate to have them." These are the kinds of partnerships that we're looking to develop through the 3000 challenge with landlords, property owners, property managers, housing providers, large and small. We want to thank the current housing providers that we work with who help us stabilize over 600 seniors annually. And we invite all housing providers to partner with all of us as the need has grown for housing opportunities, especially for people with the lowest incomes who are often older adults, have disabilities, have high vulnerability, and have been moved out of the neighborhoods that they know. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Laura. I'm Kaya Sand. I'm the Executive Director of Street Roots, and I'm feeling very inspired this morning, but that's how it always feels talking to so many people who really know how to get it done. And that's what we want to amplify. I think there's a lot of despair in the city, but we actually have so many ways to do this. So I go back to Kevin Kavanaugh's comment. The answer is yes. And that's what we're about with the 3000 challenge. We're going to say yes until we get it done. Get these ideas out there, stay on top of them until they happen. So I want to push forward another strategy that we're really wanting to see happen more often locally, and that is to purchase properties that are ready to provide housing now, or with minimal construction, because we can have nonprofits, we can have public acquisition of motels, of newly constructed apartment buildings, anything that's ready to turn into a quicker model of affordable housing. So we're promoting all of this alongside all of the other affordable housing that's happening. That we're saying there's just a lot more we can be doing, and we can do it faster. And that model is actually less expensive too. And the thing is, we have the roadmap to do this now. And that's because, thankfully, on the state level, in November of 2020, the state legislature started the Project Turnkey. And through that program that was really responding to crisis, we're seeing innovation in crisis, and we need to build on that innovation, build on the crisis of the fires and of the pandemic. And so working with Oregon Community Foundation and a number of real estate agents and developers, they work with nonprofits to or local municipal governments to get 19 of these properties sited within about 6 months around the state. And honestly, I've been going around and visiting them and writing about them, because this has been a real pocket of hope for me. As there's so much that is so difficult, but I look at this and I see it working. So, they've opened up about 900 units, which is that many more people who can live in those units. So now the Oregon legislature is about to hopefully pass the funding for Project Turnkey 2.0. The thing is that homelessness is such a statewide issue that a lot of this is about the rest of the state. We need a local Portland turnkey. We need our local governments to be investing in more of these property acquisitions to quickly turn around housing for people. And we can lean on the current Project Turnkey. They're all ready to help. The Oregon Community Foundation has proved to be a really strong leader and coordinator of this project. There's a lot of people that have worked out how to do this. So today, what we're going to do is urge local governments to take funds and to find the political will to make this happen, and to know that we have the talent to make it happen. And then we're going to stay on this. We'll trumpet any projects that can go forward, because we're all about, as Kevin Kavanaugh saying, that the answer is yes. We just need to be bold enough to make sure that any housing that's vacant it becomes a home to someone sleeping outdoors. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Andy Miller, and I'm the Executive Director of Human Solutions. Human Solutions is an organization pushing back on the forces causing poverty and homelessness, and our focus is east of 82nd Avenue in neighborhoods where the housing and homeless crisis has hit hard, especially on households of color. Our organization provides a continuum of responses to our homeless crisis, from shelter to employment and housing programs and affordable housing. And this morning I'm here to speak to our third solution that has been put forward, a call for our affordable housing investments to respond with greater urgency and focus to the crisis on our streets. We're doing a lot to create affordable housing right now, but we believe we can do much more and do it more quickly. Homelessness is the result of profound failures in many of our most important systems, including the systems through which people in our communities access a place to call home. Affordable housing, especially when it is developed and owned by community-based organizations and built and designed for the people who are most systemically excluded from the conventional housing system, can truly be the systems change we need. When we do it right, affordable housing forms a real path to systemically ending homelessness and to advancing racial justice. Our public sector partners have done great work over the last few years to develop and expand a pipeline of affordable housing, and we want to applaud that work. Today's call is that we act with even greater intention to build a sustainable pipeline of homes that respond to the specific needs of people on our streets and in our shelters, and to do that work with much greater urgency than we're doing now. We call on our leaders to look at our pipeline of affordable housing and to use every available resource to quickly expand the pipeline, to buy down rents in the units that we're developing so more of our housing is more affordable, and to open more of the doors in our affordable housing to more of our houseless by funding more supportive homes that model housing first principles that can really change the game. When we measure the success of our affordable housing, let's do more than count units and measure costs. We need to focus on the impact of our investments on the crisis we see every day. Before we invest in moving people locked outside into unworkable and temporary solutions, let's reinvest in unlocking more of the doors of our affordable housing and in making more of our affordable housing available to the people bearing the brunt of this crisis every day and every night outside. Thank you.
The 3,000 Challenge will roll out initiatives and make announcements. We welcome all the ideas. This needs to be an enormous movement. This is a campaign about insisting this all happens and pushing out good ideas. We call on our neighbors across the city. Do you support gathering the good ideas and creating the pressure to quickly create housing options? 3,000 additional people across the region. And I invite you to join as a supporter of this campaign. And all the speakers will now turn their cameras on to accept questions from the press. And we can, if there's anybody, I guess you could do a hand raise or just hop right in, either or. I'll be paying attention to the chat.
Hi, I'll go ahead and jump in. Maggie Vespa with KGW. This might be a question for maybe Katrina or anyone who feels like they can offer info here. Just, do you guys have sort of specifics on why you feel like government agencies have the funds, have the grants, have, you know, the money right now to pay that market rate rent for that number of units? I know you talked about, and I really appreciated like what you saw even on apartments.com and like that the units, the inventory exists. But can you speak to why you think that funding exists? Yeah,
I can, absolutely. So I'll just go ahead and break down some of the costs. So according to the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness, leaving somebody unsheltered and chronically homelessness costs a taxpayer $50,000 per person per year. If you provide shelter without housing placement, which are some of the options that are being discussed today, that number jumps up to $50,000 400 per year. And that's based off of a number provided by a local provider today. If you supply shelter with housing placement support, those numbers jump up exponentially up to about $72,000 to $80,000 per household per year. And with master leasing, it's about $47,000 to $52,000 today in 2022 per year. So really it isn't necessarily about having enough money to pay for units, because the units that we currently manage average from about $450 per unit per household in an SRO up to $2,200 per year, where we're covering the rent for somebody in a single family home. So this is a range of market units that are available to us. So it isn't necessarily, do we have the money? It's, yes, we know we have the money because we're talking about spending it. How do we best use that money? The Safe Rest villages that are going to shelter, I believe, 60 people in 6 spaces. It's about 360 people. The estimated cost the city anticipates is about $20 million. So it's really a question of how do we want to spend our money?
Great, I appreciate it. And then I just have one more question. Have you spoken with anybody here, city leaders or county leaders, and gotten their reaction to this pitch at this point?
Yes, so the county is very interested. We've been talking about it for a little while, and I think within the last year, I'm sorry, not you, in the last month or so, we've been discussing how to scale up this program within the next couple of months. The city has been unresponsive.
I'll just jump in too and say that we would welcome folks to endorse this if they're willing to say that they are committed to getting this done, that they won't use coercion, that they won't be creating options that are requiring people and based on bans. Then if they get those programs going, I'm super happy to host another press conference.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is the ideas being floated by the mayor's office all cost money, millions of dollars, actually. I think what we're saying instead is let's choose housing. It's a smarter investment, and it's more responsible with taxpayer dollars than our current options today. And so we're excited to do that.
And I just want to jump in and add, as an organization that provides shelter and housing, we would rather be having these resources help us move folks out of existing shelter beds. There's over 2,000 shelter beds already funded in the county. Folks are stuck in there because of a lack of resources. Instead of investing in new forms of shelter, we can be moving folks more quickly out of our existing shelter beds and thereby making shelter available. Shelter's not a great solution for everybody, but for those for whom it is a good solution, we can be making much more efficient use of the inventory of shelter beds that are already in existence and already funded if we adopt some of these strategies to more quickly move people into housing.
Great, thank you, everybody.
Can I jump in? This is Alex with the Portland Mercury. I'm curious how you see the Metro Supportive Housing Services measure and funding kind of pairing with this request. I mean, is this in some ways saying that there isn't enough funding in that funding stream to effectively open more supportive housing and affordable housing units? Is this meant to kind of pair with that funding stream, and I guess how do you kind of square that that campaign and that amount of funding with this goal?
Jump in here.
Sure.
I think that what we see right now and what people are discussing is that this supportive housing measure is staffing up, and what they're kind of hoping for is that affordable housing will be built by the time the full revenue from the supportive housing measure is available and ready to use. What we're saying is that we can use the revenue from the supportive housing measure to use existing housing, and then the supportive housing measure would just cover the supporting services and then buy down some rents in existing market housing. There seems to be this kind of delay, oh, well, let's wait, let's build it. And of course, we need to increase the supply of affordable housing. That's not the question. We need to continue to build. But in the meantime, we can use the revenue from the supportive housing measure to use existing market housing or project turnkey, or all of these options that are currently available and currently empty. So we see it as a overlay of the supporting housing measure, and that and not all of the revenue can come from there. There's other revenues that they're talking about. There's money that they're spending. Again, we talked about it throughout, that they're spending on sweeps, on cleaning, on services to people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. All of these revenues could be directed to actual housing and solve it today. We don't have to wait for the housing to be built. It exists.
Yeah, if I can add to that, Alex, I'm gonna just be totally honest with you. There are people who want to see the Metro Supportive Housing Services dollars diverted to shelter. I don't necessarily believe that is with ill intention. I believe it's probably just a lack of understanding of how much it actually costs to shelter someone versus placing them in housing and giving them support for a year, as opposed to an 85-day stay, which is the typically average stay for a family of four in a family shelter. I believe that if we continue to lift up these notions to talk about how much it actually costs to make use of our existing units and supports, and the public starts to hear that message, they'll go, oh, well, let's be smarter with investments. We can get somebody out. You tell me we can get somebody off the streets for good versus putting them in shelter for less money? Why not?
And hi, Alex. I just want to add to what Julia and Katrina have said, that the supportive housing services measure dollars, which, just to remind everyone, only started going out on July 1st. So it's only been 6 months that the money's actually been out the door to service providers like us. That really is an overlay and a complement to what we are proposing. The rent subsidy dollars that are available because of the supportive housing services measure have made it possible for our small agency just in about 3 months to house 25 people. And that is exactly what Julia was saying. We're using existing stock of housing and using those funds to buy down the rent and get people into housing. So it's really about the integration of these sort of a strong funding strategy with a focus on highly vulnerable, chronically homeless folks, with an effort to look at what solutions do we know work and pair them together.
And sorry, Alex, everyone's jumping in on your question. If I can piggyback to two things, kind of to complement what Julia said. The answer, it's not an or equation, it's an and equation. I'm building Jolene's second cousin, I break ground on this month. There are 11 folk that are living on the sidewalk today that I'll hand keys to a home to in a year. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit that's rotting on the vine because there are spaces that are open today. There's funding available today that Julia wants to access to, but she can't get to it. Likewise, when you talk about Metro's money, the last time I checked, I, as a for-profit developer, I'm not a nonprofit. I'm not allowed to get their funds. Marlon is one of Katrina's joint partners, and he lives in Jolene's first cousin. He pays $400 a month rent. He doesn't care that I'm a for-profit developer or a nonprofit developer. He has a home. So I think that is the answer. The answer is yes. The answer is every possible solution, and it's not an or equation. It's an and equation.
And I would just add to all of that, through the lens of affordable housing, it's the funding through the measure that could be one of the first resources to buy down rents in some of our existing affordable housing and some of the housing that's coming online. Turn more of our units into supportive housing and housing first. We're producing the units up to count, but the percentage of units that are actually responding to the crisis on the streets is too low. And we think that the supportive housing service measure, rather than build more shelter beds, could actually provide immediate relief to folks on the streets if we pair it more aggressively with the affordable housing pipeline.
Are there any other questions from the press?
Hi there. This is Shane Dixon Kavanaugh from the Oregonian. This is, I guess, question. I'll start with Katrina, since you sort of laid out what the cost for master leasing is per unit per year. at about $47,000 to $52,000.
Per house, sorry, per household per year. So that could be, yeah.
Per household per year. And does that, and so does that include supportive services as well, and not just the cost of the housing?
Yes, it does actually. So I can give you a breakdown real quickly. So this assumes we're moving someone from street to the house to housing. The cost includes two staff persons that support the unit and the household living in it. Their full salary plus benefits and taxes. It includes all of our supervisory, finance, and admin data staff capacity needed to run the program, their salaries plus benefits and taxes. Rents are between $450 for SROs up to $2,200 for single family homes. Of course, SROs have about one person per unit, but other units are between 3 to 8 people living in them. These are mostly private market units, not capital A affordable housing developments. This assumes we're paying about 100% of utilities each month, which is unlikely because of vouchers and utility allowances and in many cases, income from tenants. It includes our administrative and operational costs, including insurances, transportation, mileage, staff support. And it assumes we're paying full rent at 80% of participating properties, which is also unlikely as a result of vouchers. This also assumes that we're providing a $3,000 per household flexible pool of funds that are used to bolster financial stability by covering unexpected expenses. Average stay in the program before moving on to get their own unit in their own name is between 6 months to 3 years. And every now and then we have folks who stay longer. So many families go on to their own economic stability to maintain their own apartment. So yes, it does include the services with it.
Got it. So I'm just curious if sort of the push here right now is to get an additional 3,000 folks who are currently unsheltered into housing within the next year. That's not necessarily 3,000 individual units because some households can accommodate more than one person, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so I'm just if we were to do just a one-to-one, and we're looking at a $47,000 to $50,000 price tag per household. If there were 3,000 additional ones in the next year, that would be about $156 million. And now I know that the number would be smaller than that, but in terms of this 3,000 number, what's the estimated cost for this? Because we're looking at likely something that would be over $100 million as an investment just for 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Shane. And again, none of these options are free, right? Including the ones that are presented by the mayor's office. So for example, again, the Safe Rest Villages for a year of operations for 360 people, we are talking about $20 million.
Mm-hmm.
And it does not end their homelessness. They are still homeless. They're just in a camp. It also doesn't include housing placement supports. So the question again isn't how much are we going to spend? It is because we're going to spend. What are we going to spend on is the question.
Yeah, I guess the question that I have then is just sort of thinking about doing ambitious work like this on scale. I mean, if we are talking about investments that require hundreds of millions of dollars, and best case scenario with the Metro Supportive Housing Bond is $250 million a year for 3 counties. So I'm just trying to understand what we're thinking about in terms of overall costs for this type of proposal, and how we can sort of realistically get there as a city or as a metro region.
Shane, if I could jump in. Oh, sorry.
We have a very similar permanent supportive housing program that is master lease, but we serve single adults. And I just maybe want to frame that in the context that our master leasing program is $28,000 per person per year because it's a single adult. That's a pretty vast difference because it's a single adult and not a household. So our market rents are cheaper. And again, this is assuming that we're paying 100%. Everything that Katrina just said is true for us. We have a low 1 to 15 ratio of case management. We offer peer support specialists that covers all of their salaries and the full rent. But really what the case is, the rent is a lot lower because these are usually studios or 1-bedroom apartments. So that figure is an estimate for joins, but our figure at Urban League, it's $28,000 per person per year it's a lot less because it's one individual in the household. So if you're framing it versus households as versus individuals, actually the number is gonna vary quite a bit. And again, sometimes it's two individuals in that one household, but they're both adults, because we serve, the way that the homeless service system is set up right now is that adults and families are separated through the service system. So that can change the cost substantially as well. But moreover, all of these interventions are still cheaper than elongating the shelter period and then doing the placement. We're just saying that that shelter might be a necessary need for some episodic experiences that people go through. But what's happening now is long duration shelter stays that are phenomenally expensive that then don't lead to housing. We just kind of want to skip that intervention and go straight to housing. So the costs are maybe coming sooner, but they're not more.
And, we picked this 3,000 number for a reason, because it was coming out of the mayor's office, this notion of building 1,000 person shelters. That's been shifting. There's just a lot of frenetic energy coming out of that office. And so we're saying, let's just be smarter. We've got a lot of good ideas. Instead of just spinning around and throwing things out there, let's just start chipping away. And take that same number and do better. Just do a lot better. Like, have higher standards for our community, care more, right?
You're exactly right. I mean, if I can push back a little bit on your question, despite my love of your last name, it reminds me of beware of the $100,000 kitchen remodel. Like, my kitchen's gross. It's been gross for a decade, and I don't have $100,000 to fix it, so I don't do anything. I could change a light fixture for $300. I don't do it because I'm aware of this master dollar amount that I can't wrap my head around. So I just dismiss everything. So if we're looking at your $150 million math, is probably closer to 85 based on what I was hearing in Katrina's numbers, and we don't have $85 million. So let's just not do anything. I think it's a little bit of a blunt instrument, and everyone on this call is talking about using a scalpel and being surgical and being smarter about what we do with our money.
Well, just to clarify, I'm not making any proposals here, and I'm not suggesting that this approach is a blunt instrument approach. I just know that if you need buy-in from the city or county or state, if we're looking at public money to do this, I think any one of those governments is going to be asking for sort of specifics on this proposal for them to have the buy-in. So I'm just wondering, what those sort of specifics might look like, because certainly I don't know.
Well, Shane, I guess I would contrast this to what we are hearing coming out of City Hall. Those are not proposals to end the homeless crisis. They're the proposals to end public camping. And we think that's the wrong place to start. So what these are some different lanes in which we can be working together with folks at City Council. How far the money will go, you're right. And I think Kevin said it well as well. It's not going to go as far. It's not going to help as many people the same amount of money if what we're trying to do is create real solutions. But it is so much smarter to create real solutions, because you're gonna have to spend that money in the end anyway, right? You're gonna have to spend the money and political capital if you move people to 3 large encampments and then have to find them housing. Let's start by working in the lanes that actually end the homelessness of the people who are experiencing it, rather than starting with an unambitious goal of just ending public camping in places that people don't want to see it anymore.
Yes, and also real quickly, Shane, the county is interested in this proposal. We're talking about trying to scale this up within the next couple of months. The city is the one who's been unresponsive.
I would just also jump in and say, Shane, I totally understand and hear that public officials, that we might need to do a lot of detail work to convince them. And yet, what this challenge is about is an invitation far beyond elected officials. It's to our entire community of who do we want to be together? How are we going to take care of one another? How can we as individuals and groups and business owners be part of a permanent solution to the problem of houselessness? And so I think, you know, we've all seen the impact of $1.5 million of dark money and earned media as their message continues to be, you know, elevated. And what we're saying is something different. We're inviting people who are experiencing that sense of like fear and loss and despair in the community and feeling like we can't do anything about it. That's not where we are. There's so much we can do together. There's so much we can do together. There is another way. And so that's, I think, part of the challenge is giving people a way to voice that hope and that desire to participate in supporting the city that we love and the people and the neighbors that we love.
Angela, thank you so much for summing that up. And I think one of the things that we do want to get at is this is a very specific campaign, right? The 3,000 challenge, but we're also lifting up a lot of other approaches that we think are very important. And that's the eviction prevention, all of the upstream work that has to be done, all the mutual aid that people can do around our city. All of the ways that the approaches that houseless folks are trying to put forward and often get blocked. So I just want to say there's a lot of other ways to take a very constructive approach right now and to really eschew the kind of negativity that can wend its way into cruelty that we're hearing. So I think we can take one more question, but I put in the chat that we will release the video to the press list that the release went out to. If you didn't get it, if you want to be on the email, let's just put it in the chat. So do we have a single other question? Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. This is just the beginning. So there'll be things coming out of the 3,000 challenge, and we invite everyone to join us. We're not going to stop.